He is currently serving as the Chancellor of Central University of Kashmir, a renowned public speaker and a strategic commentator on matters pertaining to defense. Dr. Waeil Awwad is a senior international independent journalist and a political analyst, former president of the Foreign Correspondents Club of South Asia. The Professor Madhav Nalapath is a renowned columnist and academician who is currently the editorial director of the Sunday Guardian and ITV Network, and honorary director and UNESCO Peace Chair, Department of Geopolitics and International Relations, Manipal University. This session will be moderated by Anand Ranganathan. Anand Ranganathan is an author, scientist and consulting editor and columnist in Swarajya. He is also a pioneer whose recent indulgence was exploring the origin of Mysore Pak. The stage is over to you, sir.
Good morning. Thank you very much. And first of all, I'd really like to thank the organizers for this amazingly, brilliantly organized event. It really is. And as far as Mysore Pak is concerned, I reserve my judgment. Maybe I would speak more on it once I'm back in Delhi, because. But it's a real pleasure to be moderating this panel. The way I thought I would structure this is I would try and leave. We have 45 minutes before the Honorable Governor of Kerala is arriving, so we have limited time. I'd like to ask my fellow panelists for what they have to say on the topic, and then keep as much time as possible for audience participations and questions. But please do keep your questions very pointed and direct them to the person whom you want to ask the question to. So the topic that we have is Kashmir, a peep into the future, which is a very interesting topic. And I would also like to divide this into peep into the near future and peep into the far future, because I think those are, both categories are quite important. But before I delve into that and ask my panelists for their views, I thought I would like to give to the audience a peep into the past, because I think that's very important. If we are to deliberate on the future of Kashmir, we must know its recent past, because nations that forget their past or are fearful of their past are fearful of their future, and we don't want to do that. So, and I wouldn't, in talking about, very briefly in the next couple of minutes, talking about the a peep into the past of Kashmir, I would like to stick to the past that has been of consequence to Article 370 or a consequence of Article 370 and 35A. So I wouldn't elaborate on the other so many things that have happened in the last 70 years in Kashmir. So I wouldn't elaborate on, for example, how the state acceded to India, how Pakistan sent its mercenaries and took half of it, probably more than half of it, how Pakistan gave away a huge chunk of it to China, how there was increasing religious intolerance that started, and also a fight for this so-called self-determination that was basically an amalgamation of insurgency that was fomented by Pakistan, and also majorly through religion. Most of us know that. I wouldn't also elaborate on the genocide of the Kashmiri Pandits and their exodus, 500,000 of them. And I wouldn't also elaborate on the kind of politicking that the so-called dynasties of Kashmir have indulged in to provoke people. I would like to stick to what Article 370 has done, and according to me, my thesis is that its abrogation is just. So whatever people might say that it is an unjust thing, that this shouldn't have happened, I believe, that is my opinion, that it was absolutely just. And it does maybe make sense for me to, while I'm elaborating my points, to take names and to perhaps just mention a few personal stories, because that is how they kind of sink into the recipient's brain. So, for example, we do not know, when we talk of injustices happened through the abrogation of Article 370, we do not know the story of the 19-year-old Dalit Radhika Gill, Her family was brought to Kashmir to work as sweepers in 1957. Radhika cleared the BSF entrance exam. She was a top athlete, but she could only get a job as a sweeper because of Article 370. Outsiders were not allowed to get a job. Or, for example, the 21-year-old Dalit Eklavya. He is a Kashmiri belonging to the Valmiki community, a brilliant student, a topper. He is a postgraduate in political science, but he can only get a job as a sweeper because of Article 370 and 35A. Or, for example, you have Sagar Sahi, who is a gold medalist in Commonwealth Games. Sahil applied for a job in Jammu and Kashmir Police. He was rejected because of Article 370 and 35A. He can only be a watchman. Or, for example, you have Melu Ram, one of the 200,000 West Pakistan refugees who settled in Jammu and Kashmir. Melu Ram is still a refugee. He cannot get a job or any welfare schemes because of 370 and 35A. Or Dr. Ejaz Bund, 29-year-old. He is the only man in Kashmir publicly fighting for the LGBTQ rights, because thousands of Kashmiri homosexuals cannot dare to be seen in public. And as you know, IPC was not valid, RPC was what was applicable in Kashmir. So we have so many such stories of lakhs of Dalits, Valmikis, refugees, Gurkhas, Sikhs, homosexuals, whose rights were trampled upon for 70 years because of Article 370 and 35A. And then all these keepers of the flame of human rights and social justices and social justice warriors, they were silent for 70 years, where right before their eyes you had all these lakhs of Kashmiris whose rights were trampled upon. And now when you bring equality, suddenly they spring up and say, no, this is unjust. So this, confining myself to Article 370 and to 35A, this to me is the real injustice that has been removed. That was my peep into the immediate past. Coming to the near future, can I first please indulge into my esteemed panelist, General. General, two questions. First is about the propaganda that has been going on, and you saw recently how many Indian commentators as well as foreign publications, they talked about large-scale atrocities being committed over the last 3 months through the auspices of the Indian Army in trying to cull or quell a rebellion. Do you think the Indian state and the Indian Army has responded enough to quell that propaganda? And number two, how soon do you think the restrictions on the movement of the politicians, for example, should be now lifted, now that there has not been a single killing or death where the Indian armed forces are responsible for it?
Thank you. Can you hear me at the back? Comfortably? Okay. Thank you for these two brilliant questions, and thank you for your excellent introduction. I'll be as brief as possible so that we can cover maximum ground. Your first question actually hits the nail on the head. It's all about information. It's all about propaganda to an extent. I just want to remind the audience that as far as information and propaganda is concerned, remember, a smaller nation, like Pakistan is a smaller nation, will always attempt and always get its act together faster than a bigger nation. The inter-services public relations, which is hardly known in India, everyone knows the ISI, no one knows the ISPR of Pakistan, has from the first day, why from 5th of August, from 1949 when it was raised, has been into the game of propaganda and information and influence. We in India have been late in waking up to it. Fortunately, we are waking up to it. But it's going to be difficult catching up. So in the wake of 5th of August, there's no doubt the government of India has done a brilliant job internationally, diplomatically. Mr. Modi has gone to countries like the UAE and Bahrain and been awarded the national awards. Saudi Arabia has come on our side. But I just want to briefly share, I was in Iran 10 days ago. And I was surprised. The questions which came to me from the Iranian media seemed to be as if they were all drafted in Islamabad. It just shows that as far as the media and the information side is concerned, we are maybe still wanting. And there is more needs to be done. Diplomatically, we've achieved a lot, but this kind of a campaign has to be sustained. We are going to continue with it. Otherwise, at some stage, we may start losing out. On the second aspect of restrictions, I think, frankly saying, as far as Kashmir is concerned, movement within Kashmir, there are just no restrictions. There is no section, there is no curfew, there never was curfew. 144 was established in certain places, it was imposed. The prime complaint which the Kashmiri is perhaps making to the world and the international community and the human rights organizations is about the internet connectivity, mobile internet connectivity, which has become virtually assumed to become a human right today. Because there is business involved with it, there is emotion involved with it, and lots of things otherwise. I think time has come that we will have to start looking at this without a compromise on security. Without a compromise on security, and as a former Corps commander, I can share with you earlier times that we have had turbulence in Kashmir, 2016, 2010, 2008. Almost each time it was the mobile internet which helped mobilize the public against the nation. Street turbulence, everything. This time it was not allowed. So I think a time has come when we have been able to stabilize the situation. I think maybe the government of India could start looking at a potential risk-taking in Kashmir and play along, calibrate it accordingly.
Thank you very much. If I may ask a subsidiary question, because I think audience and I especially would like to know, who makes this decision? As you talked about that for security reasons, you would actually curtail the internet services. And although Kashmir is now overwhelmingly peaceful, who makes this decision to allow or not to allow internet services?
I don't think there is a one-man decision alone. It's a bottom-up approach in terms of recommendations. And from my experience, I can tell you, I think the one body inside Kashmir which you should be aware of is what is called the Unified Command. The Unified Command singularly looks after the security of Kashmir. It's a place where the army, the police, the intelligence agencies, the civil administration, everyone comes together formally under the Chief Minister and now under the Lieutenant Governor. That is the place where this is thrashed out. The recommendations to the central government are made, and now with Union Territory status, law and order as it is going to be a central subject. So it goes up, and probably it is at the level of the NSAB, at the recommendations of the National Security Advisor, and then ultimately I think a major decision of this kind will probably be taken at the CCS, Cabinet Committee for Security. At least I would always recommend, because that's where you get a wholesome picture of security, not just military security. You're looking at diplomatic, you're looking at economic, you're looking at all kinds of things in this. So I think that's the decision-making process.
Right. Thank you very much. Can I now bring in Professor Nalapath here? We talked about the restrictions that have been put on political leaders. So let me give you a brief background to our audience that these are the same political leaders who actually are masters of fomenting trouble. If you remember when in 2016, as the General noted, you had a lot of trouble in Kashmir. Burhan Wani, the terrorist, was killed. It resulted in large-scale so-called disturbances and uprising, where more than 100 people were killed, many of them security forces. For months, Kashmir was in turmoil. Thousands of crores, tens of thousands of crores of property was damaged, businesses were hurt. That, funnily enough, the people or the propagandists don't mention that did not happen because the Indian state perpetrated it. That happened because for the love of a terrorist and the remorse at his death. And a large part of that, fomenting the trouble, was actually played by the political leaders. In fact, in the run-up to the abrogation of 370, you've seen how ex-chief ministers, the present chief ministers, have made really incendiary comments saying that India would burn, Indian flag would burn, that it is, maybe, it is the wish of Allah that Kashmir be separated. One of the ex-chief ministers said that. So, are you for their continuance of the house arrest, or do you believe that once that restriction is lifted, we are peeping into the very near future? Do you think this trouble would start all over again?
I'd just like to say that I'm from the private sector. I'm from civil society, not from government. And the profit motive is very important for humanity. And let me tell you that the more trouble you create in Kashmir, the more of a troublemaker you are, the more you fight the Indian state, the more damage you do to the national interest, the more richly you are rewarded. These are not, you're perfectly right that many of these individuals, there are not too many of them.
Sorry, pardon for interrupting. You said the more richly you are rewarded for doing all that.
The more you create problems against the Indian state, the richer the rewards that accrue to you. As anyone who has gone there and seen their lifestyles, anyone who has tracked them in London, Miami, New York, and other locations, Singapore or Bangkok, can tell you. So the reality of the situation is, frankly, it's profitable to be anti-India in Kashmir. It's very profitable to create trouble. And these people are unhappy because their funding is being cut off, because they can go to the Middle East. I've seen them in the Middle East. I've seen them in Qatar. I've seen them in Saudi Arabia. I've seen them in Kuwait asking for money. Why? Because on various highfalutin grounds, essentially to try and destroy the Indian state. They come back and they are welcomed here. They are given free access to the Prime Minister's office. They are given free access to top-level jobs. So long as it is profitable to be anti-Indian, people will remain anti-Indian. Once you take that profit out, and I have long been an advocate of the view that we should have a system in which, let's say, 30, 40, 50, 100 of the worst troublemakers, we should put them on a one-way flight, tear their passports up, and send them off. They can go to Pakistan, they can go anywhere, but send them off. So I want to go into a base of first principles. Mahatma Gandhi, poor man, tried very hard for so many decades to keep India united. Gandhiji, like all of us sitting here, we don't believe in this two-nation theory, this absurd formulation that Hindus and Muslims come from Mars and Venus or some other place. We are the same soil, the same people, the same culture, the same DNA. But what do? Kashmir, you make an exception. Mountbatten and Nehru made an exception, which was accepted by Patel and the entire cabinet. On what ground? It's a Muslim majority state. Once you do that, you are basically sanctifying the two-nation theory. Article 370 is based on the two-nation theory, that if you are a Muslim majority state, you should be treated differently from other states in India. If you are a Christian majority state, you should be treated differently. If you are a Sikh majority state, you should be treated differently. I'm sorry, I am too unintelligent to see any difference between Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists, or anybody else. We are all proud citizens of India. So we made that mistake from day one. We said Muslims and Hindus are different. You have this minority, you have a majority. And I want to ask you simply, logically, what is this concept of minority? On the one hand, you have 200 million people. I don't see anywhere in the world where 200 million people can come close to being a minority. On the other hand, you have something which you label the Hindu community, which has got so many different strands in it. I have my mother's name. We are a matriarchal society. There are 900 different ways in which I am different sociologically from General Hasnain, who's probably coming from UP or the Hindi-speaking state. So, these absurd classification of minority and majority that we have got, this division into Muslim and Hindu, and treating people differently because they are Muslim, which began on 15th August 1947, is, I think, the root of many of the problems of India. and certainly the root in Kashmir.
Thank you very much, Professor. Before I ask you another subsidiary question, I would like to also comment that many people mistakenly believe that the two-nation theory was first proposed by Savarkar. That's not true. Then they say it was proposed by Sir Syed. That's also not true. Allama Iqbal, that's also not true. It was the first one. In fact, the first one to propose the two-nation theory was Karl Marx in his book, The Eastern Question, and I'm quoting, "The Quran and the Mussalman legislation emanating from it reduce the geography and ethnography of the various peoples to the simple and convenient distinction of two nations and of two countries, those of the faithful and those of the infidel." So you can blame Karl Marx, not Veer Savarkar. But if I can...
I'm sorry, I just want to add here. I have read the Quran multiple times. It talks of everybody being the children of the Almighty. I don't think the word Muslim is mentioned in the Quran at all. Everyone is a child of the Almighty. So I personally, in my view, the two-nation theory was created by Churchill and by Jinnah to justify the vivisection of India.
Right. I would briefly, before I come to Waeil, and get an outside, a larger perspective, not an outsider's perspective. You're more Indian than
insider.
Very much in the insider perspective. But I would like Professor Nalapath to comment on, you see now the ongoings in Maharashtra, where everyone's, allying with every other person, and the BJP also kind of indulged in it. And then I did mention that BJP has done this before in Kashmir with PDP. And I immediately got a lot of responses which said, no, BJP thought very far ahead. So when BJP aligned with PDP, who's their sworn enemy, if I can use that metaphorically, it was that they thought 2 years ahead and said, because of 370, we need to do that. A, do you believe in that theory? And B, do you think it was a fatal mistake for BJP to ally itself with BTP?
I'm not a very smart person. You have very smart people in Delhi. And frankly, in our government, they believe unless you're a police officer, you don't know security. Unless you're an IFS officer, you don't know foreign policy. Unless you're an IAS officer, you don't know domestic policy. I am neither IFS, nor IFS, nor IPS, so I'm an idiot in all these matters. I would very simply like to say, quite frankly, that I think this PDP alliance was a gross mistake on the part of the BJP. And just as this alliance with Ajit Pawar, for 5 years, Devendra Fadnavis protected Ajit Pawar. Devendra Fadnavis has spoken 1,000 times about Ajit Pawar's corruption. When he had in a position to do something about it, the man just sat in a corner and read a book. So I can tell you, I believe it was a humiliating concession on the part of the BJP for 5 years to ensure that Ajit Pawar was not accounted for what he has done. And this, frankly, is even worse in my view. Allying with Ajit Pawar was even worse than allying with Mehbooba Mufti.
Okay. On that note, swiftly coming to Waeil. While there is no doubt since August 5th, the abrogation of 370, there has been a tremendous thrust, international thrust to understand the situation. And I dare say, kind of not misunderstand it, but to make others misunderstand it. How important do you think it is for India to explain its situation to the outside world, to the other countries, to their journalists? Because you have an eagle's eye, not only as an outsider's perspective, but as an insider's perspective as well.
Thank you.
And do you think India is winning this war?
Thank you.
Propaganda war.
Thank you very much for, first of all, let me make an observation, then I will be the devil advocate, so I can speak on my own independently. Thank you for inviting me, the organizer, to Mangaluru. I have been here 3 times, and we have been to Manipal University, and I'm very happy to come back again to this wonderful city. You see, I belong to Syria. And for me, Syria in Sanskrit is Surya. It's Surya actually. So it is the sun. So I believe in all civilization. So when I look at Kashmir or I look at any places in India, I always see the background of the empire, the civilization have built up in these nations. And I mean how the transformation of Kashmir have happened from the Kashmiri Empire to the Hindu civilizations dominant with the Buddhism and then with the Muslim majorities and all. So it's a people transformation which the sustainability of civilization continue with when you have a democratically based institution all over in the country and stable and where this can continue to. So I look at the issues of Kashmir or Jammu and Kashmir as the victims of the partitions of a colonial era. That is the issue. So for me, Kashmir is beyond or before 1946 or 47. It's always been seen from those eyes. So if we need to see away from politics, the moment you involve politics in the way the movement of people start, then you will be able, you will lose direction. For us, it's India. We have grown up in a country. I grown up in this country for the last 4 decades. And I've known that any parties in power has always said Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India. So there was nothing new to me. It was just the manner in which has been implemented. That people was taken by surprise. I mean, surprise in the sense they abruptly has done. It's not that the manifesto of the party was not there. It has been always there. We know, we have seen it. But being a foreign journalist, I become sometime unable to give answers because you don't have an answer to give. What is going on inside Kashmir? Why this lockout is happening? That's the question people start asking. So you gave incentive to the people in the street and to say internationally and locally, especially in a world of a small social media networking where everybody is connected, to get misinformation. So you don't get the clear picture. I don't see the hype of getting that much from within the Kashmir. Why people should see this kind of reaction? Why? Because it has been politicized, as Major General have been saying, or Professor Nalapath. It has been politicized because the gain, they wanted this, the one country wanted better than the other one, and that's how the division was happening. For us, we wanted to know what is the government role, what is beyond. You said it is the idea of Bharat, it is the idea of future of Kashmir, peeping on the future. Let us see what the government have to gain the trust of the people, integrate the Kashmiri people into the mainstream, and let's see, Indian Kashmiri as like any other Indian all over India. There is nothing different from the rest of India. So why should be the northern part of India different from the southern part? I have no clue to that.
Right, and just as a subsidiary follow-up to that, you talked about India should strive towards integrating. What exactly do you mean? I mean, how much more integrating should India strive for if for the last 70 years one of the maximum amounts of money has been poured in Kashmir? You would like to answer that question, right? But first, I mean, what more do you think India should do?
I tell you straight, bluntly questions. Every party involved in Kashmir was happy to see the mess continue. Nobody was interested to see a solution to the Kashmir problem. I'm sorry to say that. Whether it's a politician, whether it's the people, whether it is anybody. I covered the insurgency, I covered the Kargil war, I traveled to Kashmir in many occasions. I've seen. So people are suffering. Why? Integration of the Kashmiri in the sense, give them that assurances. I written a long article where I quote A Sense of Freedom, which is a very interesting, I think everybody should read that book. In the 80s, an Irish director have written that, they have directed the movie. It's called A Sense of Freedom. It's, you give me that sense of being part of your the democracy or progressive. That is where I can excel.
But that is the question that I'm asking. What more does, because they are part of, would you like to take that?
I'd love to answer that question. As someone who went back the last time to Kashmir as the overall commander there, I asked a lot of people in Delhi, what is my task? And they said, kill maximum terrorists. I said, I've been killing terrorists all my life. Now tell me, what is my task as the overall commander here? No one could clarify to me what my task is. And that, I agree with what Nalapath Saab says. You see, we forget that on the other side of the line of control, on the other side of the international border, sits this nation which is animostic towards you. It is your born enemy at the moment and will not allow you to sit in peace. They will do everything to disintegrate Kashmir from you. And when we say integrate, I don't even use the word integrate. Kashmir is fully integrated. We only need to mainstream. And I made a task for myself in 2010, I remember. I said, what should I be doing here? What should I be working for? And the thoughts which came to my mind were to mainstream the state of Jammu and Kashmir, not Kashmir, the whole of Jammu and Kashmir, to the rest of India, not to India, to the rest of India. Politically, socially, economically, and most important, psychologically. You see, you forget that psychologically, Pakistan on the other side has been able to wrest the initiative from us and keep this population alienated. We need to de-alienate and take it back. The bottom line for me always was, when the last Kashmiri tells me, Jai Hind, we have won this conflict.
If I may add a point here, my point is very clear on these issues. It's not a victory over Pakistan. We should not see it as a one-year abrogation of 370 or 335A. It's not a victory over Pakistan. It is just bringing the people into the main India, because India is strong now, and nobody can think that India can be break up. So that is why I said you have to start building from within India to bring India all together. You're just driving in a ship. No one should be able to make a hole in your ship. That's my point.
Exactly.
Okay, and before I come to the audience, ask the audience for their questions, just very briefly, I'd like to go around the panel and ask them to have a peep into the future. So let me begin with you. But I have two questions for you. One is, let's say it's year 2030. Amit Shah is the Prime Minister or Priyanka Gandhi, I don't know. But what do you think is the situation in Kashmir when we are talking of 2030? Right now we have 95,000 security forces in there. Do you think ASPA would have been lifted, or what do you see the situation in 2030 as? And secondly, the fresh demarcation of the boundaries post the abrogation of 370, the map of Kashmir. Do you love it, or do you have complaints about it, the way boundaries of Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir have been drawn? Your comments, sir.
Massive question, of course, which can take the better part of a day to answer. But let me say, I love the blue of Ladakh. I love the blue of Ladakh, and I want to remind the audience, the blue of Ladakh goes back to 1994, actually, when the 22nd February resolution was passed in the Parliament. Both houses of Parliament came together. One of the great political moments of India, when the BJP and the Congress, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji and Narasimha Rao both came together and got their parties together, the two houses of Parliament together, to pass this resolution, which said all the territories of Jammu and Kashmir, which were under the Maharaja of Kashmir in 1947, belong to India, and that we need to aspire to get it back. I thought Article 370 and 35A should have been abrogated then. That was the time to abrogate it, when you had total political consensus. In fact, I go back, I say that after the Shimla agreement, we should have abrogated. That was even a better time. But whatever has happened, we have done it in 2019, we need to look forward now. So the question 2030, I'm reminded about China. China's 19th Congress took the date of 2035 and took the date of 2049. What do they desire in 2035 as far as China is concerned, internationally, and 2049? I think we need to do a review of that kind. And I'm not going to peg it down to say what Kashmir will be. I do feel that largely the solution to making sure that Pakistan's ability to compromise anything as far as India is concerned lies in the economic domain. Primarily in the economic domain. We are a nation of 450 billion foreign exchange reserves against 7 billion foreign exchange reserves of Pakistan. Where is the competition? And when Rajnath Saab says that the only thing left is POK to come back, I agree with him. It's not necessary to do it physically. You can do it by so many other means. We are a smart thinking nation, and that's the way we should do it. So 2030, I do think is a very early timeline. I do think that Jammu and Kashmir has a much longer timeline. The world will largely be with us. We'll have to work overtime to keep the world with us. We will have to neutralize Pakistan's capability all this time. I do think 2 to 3 generations from now, most Kashmiris, by virtue of the overall socio-economic capability of India, will be looking at India as its nation, as their nation.
Thank you very much. Waeil, straight question. Do you foresee in the very near future AFSPA being lifted from Kashmir?
I think it should be lifted. There is no question about it. What we are going to see, development, more people getting jobs, youngsters who have been complaining of the local politician whom we have interviewed for years about corruption, malpractices. I think it should be giving more transparency to the people there and let them feel it. I mean, that kind of confidence building should be there. And I'm sure there will be more of prosperity in the region. I can see it myself. My only worries is that vested interest people should not be kept and should not be giving the opportunities to damage India's future. I remember, I mean, I was in the school, I've just should mention this to you. When India went to nuclear in 1974, I mean, we were taken in the street in demonstration in favor of India. I mean, I didn't know in Syria why I'm in the street. Then I realized that we always see India as an Asian emerging power with the responsibility of a global player. We wanted to see India position on that. And I'm with that vision from the 70s, and I continue to see India a future like it.
Nice. Thank you. And lastly, but not the least, Professor, I want to give a twist to this question where I ask you to peep into the future and ask you, where do you see Kashmir in 2030? And add it to that, where do you see Pakistan in 2030?
Well, I simply want to say that it's going to depend on the policy choices that we pursue in India. That is, the establishment, the government in India pursues. And may I remind you, 30 years ago, China and the Indian economy was the same. Today, the Chinese economy is 5 times bigger than the Indian economy. That's a chance lost. If we have a smart policy, I see 2 things. One, we had an opportunity during the 1971 to settle the Kashmir issue on the lines of the status quo. Unfortunately, Indira Gandhi won the war and lost the peace. So in 72, we have the same situation can come if Gilgit-Baltistan, as the general very correctly says, and I would like to say he's one of the best military minds we have. He knows the ground situation, the whole of Kashmir very well. So if Gilgit-Baltistan and POK come back to India, I think then it is going to be 95% of that Kashmir insurgency will go, because the insurgency is kept alive by one fuel, and the fuel is somehow they'll be independent. One, that Muslims and Hindus are different, that the two can never meet, which is absurd. And secondly, that India, I mean, can never, in a sense, we can get independence because of foreign powers.
Sorry,
now,
when you talked of Gilgit and come to India, you mean by 2030 India would have taken back POK?
If we have smart policy, yes. And that smart policy means certain strategic choices. We succeeded, frankly, in the Bangladesh war because the Chinese did not intervene. The Americans were pushing them to intervene, they did not. Why? It was because we signed the Soviet treaty. I have long been an advocate of going for a strong security alliance with America. We need that. We need the Afghans on our side fighting along us, and we need the goodwill of Iran. I would have been very happy if we had abandoned S-400, which has got Chinese components. And remember, Russia is today the best ally of China. You are buying a system for a declared enemy of China, and you're buying it from the best friend of China. I don't know how sensible that is, but I would like to say, quite frankly, we need a strong security alliance with America. And if that is the case, we need a strong security alliance with Afghanistan, not these Taliban and all these people. And we need to keep Iranian goodwill, including by buying Iranian oil. So if these steps are taken, definitely we can capture that. And the most important point is, as has correctly been said by both my friends here, if India rises, I can tell you, the Kashmiri will understand his future lies with India.
Right. But, you know, when you said we need to have a very strong partnership with America, but it is America who has, that has actually forced us to stop buying oil from Iran. So how do you...
You know, back in 2015, and I have written articles on this so I can prove this, it's not just private messages that ye kar dijiye, wo kar dijiye. I asked for 2 squadrons of Indian Air Force aircraft, one based in Syria, supporting Bashar Assad, and one based in Iraq, supporting the Iraqi government, to go after ISIS. And about 5,000 special forces to go after ISIS. Naturally, all the great experts in Delhi who are experts on security, military matters, other matters, foreign policy said, oh, this is a crazy idea, don't do it. Well, that crazy idea was done independently by a gentleman called Vladimir Putin. And as a consequence, today Russia is a superpower in the Middle East, and we are still, frankly, nowhere in the Middle East.
Can I now throw open? We have, I think, 5 or 7 minutes left. Please, I'd like to take in as many questions as possible, but keep them very pointed. Yes, Savio, please. Yeah. And please direct them to whom you want to ask the questions.
Get a mic.
And only one question per person, please.
Good morning, gentlemen. I keep my question very short and straight.
Sorry, who do you want to ask the question to? To the general?
Any of the 3, because this is common question to the current situation in Kashmir. What I'm trying to understand is, okay, we are talking about the high policy decisions, external policy, external affairs, etc. I'm interested to know the local Kashmiri, what is his psyche as on today. You know, we can bring them to mainstream, we need to bring them to mainstream, all is our concern. You know, it is like clapping the 2 hands. I can bring as long as possible. But what is the psyche of the local Kashmiri? I want to understand that first as on today.
Thank you very much. Yeah. General, please.
Thank you. I think it's a brilliant question which has not really emerged here. The local sentiment is a very important aspect. And I can tell you from my experience that a very large segment, let's not peg it down to numbers, a very large segment of Kashmir, not Jammu, but Kashmir, is alienated against India. You will hear theories from different people who will say, no, only a very small segment of people is alienated, the rest are all pro-India, etc. Take it from someone who's been on the ground for many, many years. There is a sentiment against India. This sentiment is driven on the basis of ideology from across the border. And over the last 20, 25 years, attempts have been made to change the ideology of the valley, of the Kashmir valley, which we have virtually ignored because we did not know how to really go about tackling it, this whole problem. I don't think we are very sure of knowing how to tackle it even today. We need to go back to the people. Most of the things that the government of India has done have been right. The abrogation of 370, 35A, hard security measures required, it is all required for stabilization. But after stabilization, the center of gravity of this whole problem is the people. And we have to go back to the people. Now, how do you engage the people? That is the million-dollar question, and I always say everywhere that 99% of India knows that we have to do this, but we don't know how to do it.
Sorry.
That is the problem.
I think I need to play a little difference from our General Major Atta Saab. I know the Army of India have a great respect, no doubt about it. I have worked with them, I traveled with them extensively in cyclone, in drought, in earthquakes, and also in the war time. But the sense among the Kashmiri, especially in the valley, was changed in the 2000s. I have seen it, I have done a survey there. I've seen the people, I asked them simple question. When nobody asked me, in fact, to do this survey, I just walked with my mic, fox pop, doctor, teachers, anybody in the street, layman. I simply question asked them, what do you want to be part of India or Pakistan? And to my surprise, everybody want to be part of India. So I always look at this issue of Kashmir from the point of when you say 2030, I always, my answer is very simple. Who is able to turn Kashmir into South Korea will gain North Korean part without any firing a bullet. Get them into the mainstream. That's my point.
You know, it starts in the schools, General.
Absolutely.
And the point is, you have madrasas, which are the most radical, horrible ideology. I have visited Syria, his country. I have seen how these Wahhabis have destroyed Syria.
Exactly.
Wherever the Wahhabis claim they will bring heaven on earth, please show every country where they have ruled, they have brought hell on earth. And the reality is, you know, Musa Raza, there was a civil servant. He had some ideas, in my view, I don't agree with, but one idea was correct. Set up some good school systems in the valley. You replace the madrasa education with modern secular education. And till now, we are spending billions on guns, on ammunition, on troops, on public relations abroad. We are not spending that money on secular schools in the valley. Begin with the youngsters.
43 goodwill schools set up by the Indian Army. 43 goodwill schools are the most popular schools in Kashmir.
Correct.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we have time only for, as gentlemen there saying, one question.
Yeah. Mr. Anand,
Yeah.
my question is about, right here, sorry.
All right.
Yeah, my question is directed to Mr. Awwad, and based on how Syria got destabilized over the last 10 years, do you see disturbing similarities in terms of how universities are being, destabilized with students, and you have Islamic terror in the form of ISIS, and you have similar things happening in India, Indian universities plus terror in Kashmir and other parts. And my actual question is, don't you think the Indian government has room to go even more harsher and it would be justified?
Thank you. I think this is a brilliant question, and in fact, that brings me back to Professor Nalapath on this. You see, in our religion, we say, "Inna khalaqnakum shu'uban wa qaba'il lita'arafu, inna akramakum 'inda Allahi atqakum." We created you in different tribes and people all over the world, so you can meet each other. And the best out of you is who doing good service to the universe, to the humanity. So that is our message to the rest of the world. And Islam has nothing to do with it. What we are having, we have Takfiri, Islamist group. He happened to born a Muslim, trained by Wahhabist movement, moved into my country. Turkey, the de facto Erdogan, Khalifa of Ummah, opened the borders to all the terrorists from all over the world, destroyed my culture. So therefore, what worries me is, that's what I said, some sinister plot or vested interest groups who are trying to take advantage of India growing and emerging can take advantage of using the same forces, those medieval forces have come and destroyed my country, should be avoided using it in India. Because we know ISIS terrorists have been siphoned to the south of Afghanistan. They have been taken to Philippines. They have been taken to Libya, to Yemen. So it could be it's a plot. It is a project which have been successful in Afghanistan, successful in Syria and Iraq, and in Libya and in Yemen. So therefore they are going to do that. My final point is, which is we should be all aware of. Don't let these terrorists get into your mindset. I remember when I was covering Afghanistan, not a single Indian Muslim was joined Afghanistan as a terrorist. Why? Because Indian Muslims are Indians, are first Indian, then Muslim. So that's a very important part. We should understand this, the tolerance of the Indian society have created this. So don't let those medieval forces take advantage of the diversity of India.
Very true.
You think terrorism has no religion?
No religion at all, and we should all fight terrorism. It is coming to your doorstep. You should tighten your belt. The terrorisms are very much inside. All this Afghan Arab who went back to Arab country, we suffered. You learn lesson from us. Don't let these returnees coming from Syria and Iraq come back to destroy your own country. Therefore, you should fight them, rehabilitate, and don't let the mainstream. Go for awareness program among the public. Schools have to be started. You build up a school, you build up a factory. You build up a factory, you build up another educational center. That's how the life should be for the people. People need jobs to survive.
I'm so sorry, we've completely run out of time. It gives me great pleasure to thank my fellow panelists again, and the audience as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Before we conclude with this session, I now request T.S. Venkatesh, Kshetriya Sampark Pramukh of RSS, to present the delegates with the memento as a token of gratitude.
Welcome, Dr. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a huge round of applause for Lieutenant General Syed Hasnain, Dr. Waeil Awwad, Professor Madhav Nalapath, and Anand Ranganathan.